At our son's lavish housewarming party, my wife suddenly grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug through my suit jacket as she leaned close and whispered, "We need to leave. Right now." I stared at her. "Catherine, what happened?" She said nothing until we were locked inside our car at the bottom of the long driveway. Then she turned toward me, pale and shaken. "Richard, you never saw the final closing papers, did you?" That question changed everything. My name is Richard Caldwell. I was 70 years old, and for 4 decades I had built Caldwell Logistics from one battered delivery truck into a nationwide company. Catherine and I had spent our lives making sure our only son, David, would never know the insecurity we knew when we were young. We paid for college, helped with his wedding to Monica, gave him a senior position in the company, and 1 month earlier I had wired $1.2 million toward the down payment on a $2.5 million estate in the Illinois suburbs. I believed I was helping David and Monica buy their forever home. I imagined grandchildren running through the yard. I imagined Christmas mornings in that enormous living room. I imagined family. The party told a different story. The circular drive was packed with luxury cars. Caterers drifted through marble rooms with champagne and expensive appetizers. Yet David and Monica barely acted like hosts. Monica's mother, Beatrice, was the center of everything. She directed staff, described renovations, criticized flower arrangements, and spoke about the estate as though she had paid for it herself. David looked nervous from the moment Catherine and I arrived. Every time I tried to catch his eye, he adjusted his tie or found an excuse to move away. Whenever I approached him, Monica appeared and redirected him toward another guest. Then Catherine disappeared upstairs to use a bathroom. When she returned, she took my arm and got me out of the house. Inside the car, she finally explained. The downstairs restroom had been occupied, so she had gone to the second floor. As she passed the private study, she saw Beatrice inside with 3 friends. They were drinking wine, laughing, and admiring a framed document behind the desk. "It was the deed," Catherine whispered. I gripped the steering wheel. "David and Monica?" "No, neither of them." The estate, she told me, was registered to Kensington Holdings, ILC. The sole managing member was Beatrice Kensington. Kensington was Beatrice's maiden name. I felt the air disappear from the car. "Are you certain?" I read it twice. "The filing date was 3 weeks ago, right after you sent the money." I had not bought my son a home. I had financed a mansion controlled entirely by his mother-in-law. I called David from the car. He did not answer. Beatrice did. Her laugh came through the speaker before I could speak. "Oh, Richard, David is busy moving my antique furniture into the master suite. Thank you for the lovely little gift." Then she hung up. I drove home without another word. That night I opened the county property portal and found the deed myself. Kensington Holdings owned the property. Corporate records listed Beatrice as sole manager. David and Monica had no recorded ownership at all. I printed everything. At 6:45 the next morning, I walked into Caldwell Logistics and went straight to David's office. 3 years earlier, I had made him chief financial officer. I had believed he was ready to protect the company that was meant to become his legacy. He was drinking coffee behind a desk I had paid for when I entered without knocking. "Dad? You're here early." I dropped the property records in front of him. He read the highlighted lines, and the blood drained from his face. "Explain why my $1.2 million bought a house for Beatrice." "Dad, it isn't what it looks like." "Then tell me what it is." Before he could begin, Monica entered with coffee and pastries. She saw the deed, looked at David, then turned cold. "You searched public records?" she demanded. "You are spying on us?" "I gave you $1.2 million. It was a gift," Monica snapped. "A gift means you let go. You don't get to control our marriage forever, because you gave us money." David found his courage once she took over. "She's right. You don't understand how we structured this." He pulled a thick accounting folder from his desk and opened it with the confidence of a man delivering a presentation. He told me Kensington Holdings was a temporary tax vehicle. Beatrice, he claimed, was serving as trustee to reduce gift tax exposure. In 90 days, the LLC would dissolve, and the deed would automatically move to David and Monica. It sounded sophisticated if you knew nothing about tax law. I knew enough to recognize nonsense. For 40 years, I had negotiated acquisitions, trusts, corporate structures, and tax liabilities. You did not hand a primary residence to your mother-in-law's personal LLC as some magical way around federal gift rules. Monica changed tactics. Tears appeared almost instantly. "How could you think we would steal from you?" she said. "My mother has spent weeks meeting with attorneys to protect us. David has worked his entire life to make you proud, and you still treat him like a failure. Your money always comes with control." David put an arm around her. "Just trust me for 90 days, Dad. The deed will transfer." That was when I understood confrontation would get me nowhere. They had rehearsed this. So I gave them what they wanted. My shoulders sagged. I rubbed my eyes and sighed. "Maybe I overreacted," I said softly. "I'm 70. These structures are more complicated than what I'm used to." When Catherine saw Beatrice's name, we panicked. The room changed instantly. Monica wiped away her tears. David relaxed. They exchanged one quick glance, the kind people share when they think they have won. "I should have trusted you," I continued. "I'm sorry." David smiled. "It's okay, Dad. Let the younger generation handle the complicated parts." I nodded and walked toward the glass door. The fluorescent hallway reflected in the darkened pane like a mirror. As I pulled the door open, I saw David dive back into his chair. He grabbed the mouse and frantically dragged a folder into the trash. The folder name was large enough to read in the reflection. Caldwell_pension_transfers. I kept walking. A hidden house deed was greed. A file named pension transfers was something else. Hundreds of employees trusted me with their retirement. Men and women had loaded trucks in snowstorms, managed warehouses at midnight, and spent 30 years building the company beside me. If David was touching that money, this was no longer a family betrayal. It was a crime against everyone who had helped create our business. I needed to know who controlled him. That afternoon, I bought an expensive crystal vase and drove back to the new estate. I wanted to look like an embarrassed father delivering an apology. The front door was ajar. I entered quietly and followed Beatrice's voice. In the living room, David, chief financial officer of a $40 million company, was on his hands and knees, measuring the position of a Persian rug. Beatrice stood over him with a teacup. 2 inches left, she snapped. "I told you I want it centered under the chandelier. Are you incapable of following a simple instruction?" "Sorry, Beatrice," she snapped her fingers at him. "Hurry, the designer will be here in 20 minutes. I will not have my home looking incompetent because you cannot measure a rug." My son looked like a frightened employee. I stepped forward deliberately so my shoes clicked against the marble. David jumped to his feet. Monica entered from the kitchen. "Richard," she said, "why didn't you call?" I lifted the vase. "A peace offering." Beatrice's mouth curved into a satisfied smile. "Put it on the side table. Don't scratch the wood." I did exactly that. Then I casually asked David about fourth quarter projections and the new Ohio distribution center. Monica stepped between us. "David is not working today. We are setting up my mother's house. Your trucking company can wait until Monday." I looked at David. He stared at the wall. "She's right, Dad. We'll talk next week." I nodded. "Of course. I'll use the restroom before I leave." Instead, I slipped into Beatrice's study. The frame deed Catherine had described hung behind the desk. I moved around the chair, and my shoe caught an ornate metal wastebasket. It tipped over. While gathering the papers, I noticed a red logo on several torn letters. They were final notices from offshore casinos. All were addressed to Beatrice Kensington. The balances were enormous. Multiple accounts, Caribbean casinos, immediate payment demands, threats of collection. Beatrice was not an aristocratic financial genius sheltering family assets. She was a compulsive gambler drowning in debt, I returned the torn pages exactly as I found them and left the estate smiling politely. At home, I told Catherine about the pension folder, David's humiliation, and the casino letters. "Our son is stealing from the company to pay her debts," Catherine whispered. "We have to call the police." "Not yet." She stared at me. "If David controls the financial systems, he can erase what we need before investigators understand where to look. I need direct evidence first." That night I waited until 2 in the morning. Then I entered my home office and opened a laptop David believed I barely knew how to use. He had modernized Caldwell's financial network and changed every visible administrative credential after becoming CFO. What he had forgotten was that I personally supervised the original architecture. Long before we had an information security department, I had insisted on a legacy emergency access route buried beneath the normal interface. I typed credentials that had not been used for 15 years. The screen turned green. I was inside. I bypassed David's polished quarterly reports and opened the raw CFO ledger. For an hour, everything looked normal. Fuel, maintenance, warehouse leases, payroll, insurance. Then I found it. A recurring payment of exactly $30,000. Category: Strategic Logistics Consulting. Vendor: B. Ridge Consulting. I opened the vendor profile. The billing address was the same rent-controlled Chicago apartment where Beatrice had lived before Monica married David. B. Ridge, Beatrice, $30,000 every month flowed from Caldwell Logistics to a fake consulting firm attached to my daughter-in-law's mother. I began an evidence download. Before it could start, the screen flashed red. Admin override detected. CFO alerted. David now knew someone had entered the ledger. I killed the power immediately. Then I scattered old personal retirement statements across my desk and went upstairs. At 6:15 the next morning, tires tore into the driveway. David pounded on the front door. I opened it wearing a bathrobe, my gray hair deliberately disordered. He looked terrible. Bloodshot eyes, wrinkled clothes, panic behind every word. "Dad, the company network was breached last night. Someone used legacy override credentials at 2 in the morning. The IP points to this house. Did someone get into your office?" I looked embarrassed. "Oh, David, that was me." He froze. "What were you doing in the central ledger?" "I couldn't sleep. I wanted to check my retirement accounts, but that software you installed is impossible. I kept clicking things. I tried some old passwords. Then the screen turned red, so I unplugged the computer. For several seconds he stared at me. Then relief flooded his face. "Unbelievable," he said. "You triggered a level 5 alert over a pension statement." He put a hand on my shoulder and spoke slowly, like I was a child. "You are too old to be messing with modern systems. If you want a statement, call my assistant. Never enter the company network again." I lowered my eyes. "You're right, I should leave it to you." His arrogance returned completely. He drove away, convinced the threat was gone. I watched his car disappear, then picked up a burner phone. "Thomas," I said, "I need you to quietly tear apart my son's financial life." Thomas Bradley had spent years as a forensic auditor. He could follow one stolen dollar through 6 countries and 4 shell companies without leaving a footprint. He did not ask why. He only said, "Send me what you have." That Friday, Catherine invited David, Monica, and Beatrice to dinner. I said nothing about Thomas. If David suspected we had begun a real investigation, he could destroy evidence. So I smiled through the meal while Beatrice insulted Catherine's cooking. Monica laughed at her remarks, and David spoke confidently about how perfectly the company was running without my interference. Halfway through dinner, the burner phone in my pocket vibrated. Under the table, I read Thomas's first message. "Kensington Holdings. Empty Delaware shell. No legitimate operations. Used only ASA. Pass through." A second message arrived. "B. Ridge Consulting is fraudulent. $30,000 monthly payments routed through Cayman account." Then a third. "Outbound funds go to casinos. betting entity's ANDA Macau debt firm. Beatrice's debt is far larger than the monthly payments. I watched Beatrice criticize the wine while stolen money kept her alive. Then, my phone vibrated again. Step outside. This is bigger than cash flow. I excused myself and walked through the cold night to a parking lot behind our community center. Thomas waited in a dark sedan. His laptop illuminated the cabin. "You were right about the consulting payments," he said. "But the casinos stopped extending credit 6 months ago." Beatrice turned to private lenders. She owes more than $2 million to an international loan syndicate, and David is paying them from company operations. Thomas shook his head. $30,000 a month cannot cover it. He crossed the line you were afraid of. He turned the screen toward me. David has already removed more than $4 million from the Caldwell Logistics employee pension reserves. For a moment, I could not speak. I knew those accounts by the names behind them. Drivers, mechanics, warehouse supervisors, dispatchers, people who trusted the promise that when their bodies finally gave out after decades of work, the money would be there. My own son was burning their futures to protect Beatrice. Thomas slid another stack of papers onto my lap, and he built himself an exit. The documents bore my digital signature. They named me as guarantor for Beatrice's private debts. They authorized phantom subsidiaries. They approved pension transfers. Every forged order pointed upward to me. "If regulators find the missing pension money," Thomas said, "David will claim he was following your instructions. On paper, you become the architect." He framed me completely, then he handed me one more document. It was a petition for emergency medical conservatorship. Thomas had recovered emails between David Monica and a corrupt private judge. The plan was scheduled for the following week. They intended to testify that grief and age had made me dangerously confused. They would use my recent confrontation over the house, the Midnight Network alert, and any other staged incident as proof of cognitive decline. Once the court signed the order, David and Monica would control my finances, medical decisions, and company voting rights. They chose a private memory care facility in Nevada, Thomas said. Secure, isolated, tightly controlled communications. Once you are inside, they intend to blame the pension theft on your supposed dementia, repair the books, and keep you away from lawyers. They were not simply trying to steal my business. They planned to bury me alive while I was still breathing. I handed the petition back to Thomas. "What do you need from me?" "Time and access. You have both." The next morning, I gave David and Monica exactly the evidence they wanted. I shuffled into the kitchen while David was reviewing a report and looked directly at him. "Morning. Michael. Did you finish the warehouse inventory?" Michael was my brother. He had been dead for 20 years. David went still. "Dad, it's David." I blinked, looked embarrassed, and apologized. Later, when Monica visited Catherine, I put my car keys inside the refrigerator beside the milk. 10 minutes later, I pretended I could not find them. Monica discovered them with theatrical alarm. David discreetly typed a note into his phone. They were delighted. Every false sign of decline strengthened their petition, and everyone existed because I had chosen to create it. At night, Thomas and my attorneys worked with me in secure locations. We copied transaction histories, preserved server logs, traced Cayman transfers, and prepared sworn forensic reports. My legal team notified federal fraud investigators and placed quiet restraints around the forged guarantor documents. I also moved my private assets into protected trusts that David could not reach. Then, I made a structural move he would never anticipate. Caldwell Logistics still owed a substantial obligation against our primary distribution complex. Through a lawful restructuring, I transferred that secured position into my private trust. If David somehow seized control of the company, he would inherit a corporation owing a massive debt directly to the trust he could not control. By Thursday, I had digital evidence, legal protection, and a federal team ready to act. But I wanted one final thing: intent. A criminal can deny a ledger. He can blame an accountant. He can claim signatures were automated. I wanted David and Monica speaking their plan in their own voices. So I built bait. On official Caldwell letterhead, I drafted a document titled Immediate Transfer of CEO Powers. It surrendered my executive authority, banking access and operational control directly to David. It was believable enough to be irresistible. I placed it on my home office desk beside my gold fountain pen. Then I activated a pinhole camera hidden inside the spine of an old encyclopedia. It covered the entire desk and streamed to an encrypted server. After dinner, with David and Monica still in our house, I announced that I felt unusually foggy and tired. I left some paperwork in the office, I said. Don't disturb anything. I'm going upstairs. Catherine and I did not stay upstairs. We quietly packed overnight bags, slipped through a side entrance, and entered a car Thomas had arranged. From a secure downtown hotel room, we watched the office feed. For more than an hour, nothing happened. Catherine held my hand. She still wanted one impossible miracle, that our son would see the unsigned transfer document and walk away. At 1:15 a.m., the office door opened. David entered first. Monica followed. They moved directly to the desk. David read the document and smiled. The old fool actually drafted it, he whispered. He's handing us everything. Monica read it, then laughed. He's completely broken. We may not even need the court fight. David picked up the fountain pen. We'll get him to sign this at Friday dinner. I'll tell him he looks exhausted, and this is best for his health. Then his voice became colder. Once he signs, we control the remaining pension reserves. We settle Beatrice's lenders. Monday, we file the conservatorship. By the end of the month, he's in Nevada. That facility controls every phone call. He'll never reach a lawyer or bank manager. Catherine broke down beside me. On the screen, our son calmly discussed erasing us. I wrapped an arm around her and kept watching. Let them have Friday, I said. It will be the last night they believe they own anything. Friday evening, the Kensington estate looked like a palace. Beatrice had invited wealthy friends, business acquaintances, and social climbers to witness what she believed was her triumph. Valets lined the circular drive. A quartet played in the living room. Champagne moved through rooms decorated with imported marble and art purchased on borrowed money. I arrived leaning on a cane. Monica greeted us loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. Richard, I'm so glad you remembered the way. We know you've had some difficult days. I gave her a vacant smile. My memory has been terrible. David visibly relaxed. The black leather folder holding my bait document sat near him all evening. Beatrice paraded guests through her estate, telling them about renovations. Then she humiliated Catherine publicly. Catherine, darling, she called. Since you're standing there, pass these appetizers around. You have such natural experience serving simple food. Guests went quiet. Catherine's face reddened, but she lifted the tray with dignity. I stayed in character. Not yet. At dinner, I rattled my silverware, spilled water, and let my hand shake. David watched with satisfaction. Then Beatrice went too far. She pointed her wineglass at Catherine and laughed. You make an excellent little maid. Perhaps I'll hire you permanently once Richard is locked away. I set down my fork. The tremor stopped. I straightened in my chair. The entire room changed. My wife, I said quietly, is the foundation of everything you see around you. Beatrice stared. She built a life of substance while you built debts and vanity. You will never speak to her that way again. The guests fell silent. Beatrice exploded. She stood so quickly her chair fell backward. She hurled a crystal glass onto the floor. How dare you speak to me that way in my own home? She turned to David. Do something. David marched toward me. The frightened son I had seen measuring a rug vanished. In front of Beatrice, he became aggressive. You're having another episode, he hissed. Apologize now, or I will put you in permanent care tomorrow. You cannot function in normal society anymore. Then he grabbed the black folder. He pulled out my transfer document and slammed it on the table. The gold pen followed. Sign this and apologize. I looked at the pen. He leaned closer. I picked it up with both hands and snapped it in half. Black ink spilled over the document. Then I looked directly into my son's eyes. "You are fired." David froze. Before he could speak, the main doors opened. Thomas Bradley entered. 2 federal agents came with him. The room inhaled as one. I stood without using the cane. David's face collapsed. I looked around at Beatrice's guests. "My son has spent months telling people I am losing my mind," I said. "He needed that story because he has been stealing from the company he expected to inherit." Thomas placed a forensic packet on the dining table. I began with Kensington Holdings. I explained the Delaware shell, the fake B. Ridge Consulting invoices, the $30,000 monthly Cayman transfers, the betting companies, and the Macau debt processor. Then I turned to Beatrice. "Your new lifestyle is not wealth. It is panic. You owe more than $2 million to dangerous private lenders because you cannot stop gambling." Her hand flew to her emerald necklace. I turned to David. "And because those consulting payments were not enough, my son removed more than $4 million from the employee pension fund." The room erupted in whispers. David's knees visibly weakened. "He forged my digital signature. He created documents making me guarantor of Beatrice's debt. He wanted investigators to believe every illegal transfer came from me." I placed a copy of the conservatorship petition beside the ruined transfer document. Then he planned to declare me incompetent and lock me inside a Nevada facility before the annual audit exposed the missing money. David fell to his knees. "Dad, please." I ignored him. The federal agents moved toward Beatrice. She tried to run for the foyer. They blocked her. Then I removed one final document from my jacket. "The house," I said. Monica stopped crying long enough to look at me. "You believed my $1.2 million was an unconditional gift. It was not. The funds came from the Caldwell corporate treasury and were documented as a secured employee housing loan tied to David's continued employment." David stared up at me. "Because David is terminated for gross financial misconduct, the loan is in immediate default." I placed the foreclosure notice on the table. "Kensington Holdings may be on the deed, but the secured obligation is mine to enforce. This property is being foreclosed. You have 24 hours to leave." Monica screamed at David. "You said we were safe. You said he was too old to understand the transfers." Then she slapped him across the face. "I am filing for divorce." She stormed out. Beatrice kept shouting that she was respected, connected, and untouchable. The lead agent took out handcuffs. "Beatrice Kensington, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to defraud a federally regulated pension plan." Her scream echoed down the corridor as they led her away. David remained on the rug. He crawled toward me. "Dad, please, I'm your son. I made mistakes. Don't let me lose everything." I stepped back. "You made choices." I looked at the people who had spent weeks treating me like a senile obstacle. "You chose them over your mother, your employees, and me. Now you will live with what you chose." I left the estate with Catherine. We did not look back. By Monday, the scandal was public. Federal investigators seized records from the company and from Beatrice's shell entities. News outlets reported the pension theft, offshore transfers, and fraudulent conservatorship attempt. Business partners abandoned David. Beatrice was denied bail after prosecutors documented her international financial connections and flight risk. Monica filed for divorce almost immediately and tried to paint herself as another victim. Her own recorded conversations made that story difficult. My priority was not revenge. It was the pension fund. I returned to Caldwell Logistics and called every employee into the main warehouse. Hundreds of people stood in front of me, waiting for the worst. I told them the truth. More than $4 million was removed from your retirement accounts. Fear moved through the crowd. Then I told them what had already been done. My private assets and recovered corporate reserves had been used to restore every missing dollar. No employee would lose a cent because of my family. The relief was overwhelming. Men who had driven for me for 25 years cried openly. Warehouse workers hugged one another. A supervisor named Carlos, who had started with us when we had 6 trucks, shook my hand so hard it hurt. That day I understood something I should have understood long before. Family was not sitting at Beatrice's marble table. Family was standing on a concrete warehouse floor in steel-toed boots. Catherine and I sold our oversized house soon afterward. We bought a smaller single-story home outside the city with a porch, a garden, and no rooms we did not need. For the first time in years, silence felt peaceful. The legal cleanup took weeks. Beatrice's first federal hearing was nothing like the glamorous life she had displayed at the estate. The emeralds and silk were gone. Her attorneys argued that she was an older woman with deep community ties and no reason to flee. Prosecutors answered with Cayman transfers, Macau payments, casino markers, and evidence that she had used an LLC to conceal assets, while millions of dollars disappeared from employee retirement accounts. The judge denied bail. Catherine and I watched from the back of the courtroom. Beatrice did not look at us until deputies began leading her away. When she finally turned, there was no remorse in her face, only disbelief that rules applied to her. That was always her real weakness. She had spent so many years treating other people as supporting characters in her story that accountability felt like an insult. David's fall was quieter and, in some ways, more complete. Caldwell Security disabled his credentials before noon on the day after the raid. His company car was recovered. His corporate cards were canceled. His office was sealed for investigators. The board accepted his termination after reviewing Thomas's forensic report, the recorded conversation in my office, and the forged documents. 3 years earlier, I had proudly handed him the CFO title. Now strangers packed his belongings into cardboard boxes. I never went to watch. There was nothing left for me to prove. Monica's lawyers moved fast. She claimed she had been under pressure from her mother and husband. She claimed David controlled the company, and Beatrice controlled the debts. She insisted she had merely trusted the people closest to her. But video has no sympathy. The camera in my office had recorded her laughing about my supposed senility, celebrating the plan to seize the remaining pension money, and discussing the Nevada facility where I would be isolated from lawyers and banks. Her words survived every new version of her story. The public scandal was brutal. People who had toasted Beatrice's new mansion stopped returning calls. Invitations disappeared. Professional associations distanced themselves. The social circle she had spent years cultivating did what shallow circles always do when status becomes dangerous. It moved on without her. None of that mattered as much to me as Caldwell Logistics. The first morning I walked back through the headquarters after investigators secured the servers, the building felt wounded. Employees spoke in low voices. People watched executives walk past and wondered who else had known. Trust, once damaged, is not repaired by a memo. So, I did not send one. I went department by department. I sat with payroll. I visited dispatch. I stood in the maintenance bay while mechanics worked beneath trucks. I walked the warehouse floor and answered questions until there were no more questions left to ask. I told him exactly what David had done. I also told him exactly what I had done to repair it. Thomas and the federal team had traced a significant portion of the stolen funds before they could disappear permanently. My attorneys froze connected accounts. I covered the remaining gap personally, rather than forcing employees to wait through years of litigation. The pension balances were restored. Not promised. Restored. I required our benefits administrator to issue individual statements showing every employee's corrected balance. I brought in an outside fiduciary firm that had never worked for the Caldwell family. From that point forward, no single executive, not even me, would have unilateral access to retirement reserves. The company had survived my son's betrayal, but survival was not enough. I wanted the structure improved, so no future son, daughter, spouse, or founder could ever repeat it. Catherine helped me understand another part of the recovery. One evening, after we moved into the smaller house, I found her unpacking a box of old photographs. There was David at 8 years old holding a baseball glove. David at graduation. David dancing with Catherine at his wedding. She sat on the floor with the photographs around her. "I don't know what to do with these," she said. I understood. The crimes were real, but the memories were also real. We could not rewrite 30 years simply because the man in the photographs later became someone capable of betrayal. So we did not burn them. We placed them in a box, closed the lid, and stored it in the attic. That was how we learned to live with what happened. We did not pretend the past had never existed. We simply stopped allowing it to control the present. The smaller home helped. There were no unused formal rooms, no massive staircase, no need for staff. Catherine planted herbs and winter flowers near the porch. I began drinking morning coffee outside again. On some afternoons, we could hear children playing in a nearby park. Our life became ordinary. After months of deception, ordinary felt luxurious. Then, late one November night, a storm rolled across Illinois. Freezing rain struck the windows. Wind bent the bare trees. Catherine and I had already gone to bed when the doorbell rang at exactly midnight. Then it rang again. And again. I walked to the front door and turned on the porch light. David was standing outside. He looked nothing like the executive who had threatened to lock me away. His suit was soaked and ruined. His hair was plastered to his head. His face had become gaunt. Mud covered his shoes and trousers. He was shivering so violently his teeth clicked. I opened the door but did not step aside. He collapsed to his knees. "Dad, please, I have nowhere to go." I said nothing. "It was Monica and Beatrice," he cried. "They manipulated me. Beatrice's debts were out of control. Monica threatened to leave. They pushed me into everything. I never wanted to hurt you. Even now he blames someone else. The divorce froze my accounts," he continued. "The government seized everything. Nobody will answer my calls. I haven't eaten. Please, I'm not asking to come inside. Let me sleep in the garage. Just tonight." For one moment I saw the little boy I had once carried on my shoulders. Then I remembered the hotel recording. We secure the pension funds. We file the conservatorship. We lock him in Nevada. He never talks to a lawyer again. I looked down at him. "I gave you an empire, David. I gave you education, security, a career and a family that loved you." He sobbed harder. "You answered by trying to put me in a cage. Dad, please. You are not asking me to forgive one mistake. You are asking me to pretend you did not choose, over and over, to destroy other people for money." He reached toward the threshold. I stepped backward. "You are not my son anymore. You are a consequence of your own decisions, and consequences have to be faced." I closed the door. The deadbolt clicked. For a long time, I stood in the hallway listening to the storm. Then I walked into the living room. Catherine was sitting beside the fireplace with a blanket over her knees. I took her hand. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, our life was finally ours again. The next morning, the storm had passed. The porch was wet, branches were scattered across the yard, and the sky was pale and clean. There was no sign of David. I stood by the front window with a cup of coffee and thought about the question parents almost never want to ask. When does helping a child stop being love and start becoming permission? For years, Catherine and I believed generosity could compensate for every weakness. When David struggled, we paid. When he failed, we repaired. When he wanted status he had not earned, we gave him access to ours. We told ourselves we were giving him opportunities. In reality, we had often protected him from consequences. That protection did not make him stronger. It taught him that someone else would always absorb the cost. Beatrice and Monica did not create that weakness. They exploited it. David still made every choice himself. He chose to steal. He chose to forge. He chose to drain pensions. He chose to build a legal cage for his own father. And on that freezing porch, he chose one final time to blame everyone except the man whose signature appeared on the crimes. Closing the door did not feel triumphant. It felt necessary. There is a difference. I did not hate my son. Hate requires a kind of ongoing intimacy I no longer had. What remained was grief for the man he might have become, and relief that Catherine and I had finally stopped sacrificing ourselves to preserve his illusion of innocence. Months later, Caldwell Logistics was stable again. The pension controls were stronger. Employees had independent oversight. The foreclosure and federal actions unwound the fraudulent structures surrounding the Kensington estate. The company no longer existed as a private playground for whoever happened to share my last name. That mattered to me. A business built by hundreds of loyal people should never be treated as a family ATM. Neither should a parent. Blood can create a relationship. It cannot guarantee character. Family is built through loyalty, respect, truth, and the willingness to protect one another when there is nothing to gain. If someone only values you for the money you provide, the title you can transfer, the house you can buy, or the consequences you can erase, they are not protecting the relationship. They are protecting access. Sometimes love means helping. Sometimes love means forgiving. And sometimes the only honest form of love left is a locked door and a consequence that finally belongs to the person who created it. If you have ever had to set a hard boundary with a toxic relative, tell me where you are watching from and share your experience in the comments. If this story meant something to you, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about betrayal, survival, family, and justice. Catherine once told me that the hardest part was not losing the money or the house we sold afterward. It was losing the future she had imagined. She had pictured family holidays, grandchildren, Sunday dinners, and an old age surrounded by people we had spent our lives protecting. That future disappeared. But another one took its place, a quieter one, a porch, a garden, a warm room during a storm. Two people who had been married long enough to understand that peace is not a small reward. It is the reward. And when I think of what survived, I do not think of the estate, the company valuation, or any account balance. I think of Catherine's hand in mine. I think of the workers who trusted us and whose retirements were restored. I think of the truth finally standing in a room where lies had been treated like power. That is the legacy I intend to keep. And in the quiet evenings, when memory returns to the people who raised us and the people we once believed we could save, another voice seems to remain. I used to ride upon your shoulders, certain you could touch the sky. Every road felt less uncertain when I watched it through your eyes. You were stronger than the mountains, taller than the northern pines. When the winter winds were coming, you would stand between them and I. Time keeps moving like a river, carrying years toward the sea. Still, no matter where life takes me, you remain a part of me. I am my father's daughter. Every step I choose to take, every time I stand with courage when it would be easier to break, I carry what you taught me deep inside my heart and soul. Though the years keep moving onward, your love still leads me home. You taught me strength is more than power. It is kindness when life is hard. You taught me how to keep on walking when the road turns cold and dark. Every lesson, every story, every laugh beside the flame stays within me like an echo, calling gently through my name. When I face my hardest battles, when I fear I cannot go on, I can almost hear you near me. Child, you're stronger than you know. I am my father's daughter. Every time I choose to stand, I carry all your courage like a fire in my hands. The world may change around me. The years may take their toll. But the quiet love you gave me will keep guiding me back home. One day snow will hide the footprints. One day every fire burns low. But the things a father gives a daughter are the things that do not go. Not the gold, and not the trophies, not the battles he once won. It is the quiet way he loved her and the woman she becomes. I am my father's daughter, and I always will remain through every triumph, every failure, every joy, and every pain. The stars may fade above me. The world may change its view. But when someone asks me who I am, I will know what still is true. I am my Father's daughter. I carry love that time cannot erase. I carry strength without cruelty and memory without shame. And wherever life may lead me, through every road unknown, I will carry that love with me. It will always lead me home,